Om. Om Shri Ganeshaya Namaha. Om Shri Saraswatyai Namaha. Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Samasta Jana Kalyane Niratam Karunamayam Namami Chinmayam Devam Sadgurum Brahmavidvaram Shruti Smriti Purananam Alayam Karunalayam Namami Bhagavat Pada Shankaram Loka Shankaram. Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om. So today we are going to see only two verses that is about Tattvabodha Masi. All right. So I'm sure we all are already aware that there are something called as Mahavakyas, right? In our Vedas, Mahavakyas, these are famous statements that bring out the unity of the individual and the infinite. Okay, so whichever statements indicate this relation between the individual and the infinite is called as Mahavakyas. Actually, there are many Mahavakyas, but 4 Mahavakyas are very famous, each from one Vedas. Okay, what are those 4 Mahavakyas and how do we understand them is what we are going to see in the next 2 verses. Okay, so the 4 Mahavakyas, you may already know this. From the Rig Veda, it comes in different Upanishads. Okay, from the Rig Veda, the Mahavakya is the Prajnanam Brahma. All right, that Prajnanam Brahma is the Mahavakya from Rig Veda. It comes in Aitreya Upanishad. From Yajurveda, we have Aham Brahmasmi. All right, that we have from Yajurveda. Brihadaranyaka Upanishad is having this verse. And then from Samaveda, we have Tattvabodha Masi in Chandogya Upanishad. Okay, so that Tattvabodha Masi we are going to see in detail in today's class. And from the Atharva Veda and the Mandukya Upanishad, I am Atma Brahma. This statement is there. These 4 are popularly considered as the most common Mahavakyas. Apart from that, we also have other Mahavakyas like Soham, Tattvabodha, all this come in different Upanishads. All these are also Mahavakyas. Okay, so how do we reflect on this Mahavakya? Because they are all statements of truth, right? And the more we meditate on it, the more we get to know about our own true self. So how do we understand these Mahavakyas? We are going to see in the coming 2 verses. All right, so we've already seen in the last verse the relationship between the individual and the God, and how Adi Shankaracharya said that he concluded saying that in essence, these 2 are the same, is what he concluded with. And we also saw how we can say that I am Brahman is a valid statement, but I am God is not a valid statement. We also saw about that in the previous class. The same theme is going to get extended a little bit in today's class. All right, so let's see what it is. So we will go to that verse directly. So it says, Nanu sahamkarasya kinchignyasya jivasya nirahamkarasya sarvagnyasya ishwarasya tattvam asiti Mahavakyat katam abeda buddhi syat ubhayo viruddha dharma krantatvat. It is asking, the verse is asking, the individual is endowed, okay, with ego. Sa ahamkara, the individual is with the ego. Sa ahamkarasya kinchignyasya, who also has only limited knowledge. Whereas the Ishvara is nir-ahankara. The Ishvara the Lord doesn't have any ego, and he is sarvagnya. He has complete or unlimited knowledge. But how can we equate these 2 and say Tattvabodha Masi? How can you say that? How can there be the identity as stated in the great statement, as stated in the Mahavakya Tattvabodha Masi? Because these 2 have contradictory characteristics. That's what Viruddha Dharma Krantatvat. Viruddha Dharma, opposing or opposite qualities or characteristics is there between the individual and the Ishvara, then how can we say this Tattvam Asi? How is that statement even possible? Is what is the question that is asked over here. Okay, so actually, if we see, when we say aham brahmasmi or tattvamasi, if people sometimes hear these statements, they say there can be like different types of reactions, right? Sometimes people will feel, how is it even possible? It is like very blasphemous, right? You cannot equate yourself to God. God is something bigger than us, something that is more powerful, and God only is controlling our lives. So how can we say Tattvamasi or Aham Brahmasmi? We should not say that. In fact, some religions even take offense to statements like this, right? So there is one that in that way people also see. And sometimes people feel like, oh, if somebody is saying Aham Brahmasmi, Tattvamasi, he's so full of ego. Otherwise, how can a man even make such a statement? All these questions are naturally occurring only, but still the Vedas insist on this. This is the truth. This is the ultimate essence of all the Vedas, right? That is why they are called Mahavakyas. This is the thing that we have to grasp from all those studies, all those reflections. What we are aiming to gain is this experiential knowledge of Tattvamasi, isn't it? So that is the ultimate purpose of all the Vedas. So then how can this be possible? How do we look at this statement? So one thing we have to be clear, whatever is being said in the Vedas or the Upanishads, they are the truth. That is the fundamental assumption with which we are going to proceed all our studies. But sometimes when we listen to the statements, we will get doubts and confusions, and sometimes we won't even be able to accept certain statements. Then we have to proceed with the understanding that our perception has to change. It is a questioning of elevating ourselves to the vision of the Vedas and not the other way around. All right, that much clarity we should have. If you are not able to understand or comprehend something, or if you feel whatever is being said in the Vedas and Upanishads are contradictory to our beliefs and understandings, we have to proceed with the perception that our vision has to change. We have to elevate ourselves to truly understand the essence of those statements and not go about finding fault with the Vedas and Upanishads. Okay, this is one of the basic tenets. So with this in mind, we will see how this Tattvamasi should be looked at. Okay, so before we even go to that next statement, we have to see something called as actual meaning and indicative meaning. This we use it in everyday parlance, right? Like, for example, we say, oh, he is a lion of a man. We say that, no? Swami Vivekananda roared like a lion. Did he actually make sound? No, that's not what we mean. We mean he was very majestic, very powerful. Isn't it? That lion had an indicative meaning. When we say he roared like a lion, it doesn't mean suddenly he spouted all this manes and, grew big teeth and made a deafening roar. That's not what is meant here, isn't it? Even Gurudev, we say Swami Chinmayananda is the lion of Vedanta. Because his teachings were so majestic and so powerful. Not because he looked like a lion or he rolled like a lion, isn't it? This is the indicative way in which we use a statement. Similarly, we have the actual meaning also, isn't it? When we say he's a tall man, it literally means he's a tall man. There is nothing indicative about it, isn't it? So in that way, this Tattvamasi also has a actual meaning and also an indicative meaning. And we are going to see what is the actual meaning, what is the indicative meaning, and how we have to look at the statement. If we understand for Tattvamasi, every other Mahavakya, it's pretty much the same concept only. Okay, so we will see on that. So what is the literal meaning of Tattvamasi? Tat Tvam Asi, that thou art. Okay, so that is the supreme truth, Brahman, Atman, self, that thou, you are that. That is the actual meaning of Tattvamasi. Now we will see a little bit more about the Vakyartam and Lakshyatam. So this actual meaning and indicative meaning is called as Vakyartam and Lakshyatam in Sanskrit. Okay, so we will see what they are. Then we will get a little bit more clarity about this statement. See, this is important that we are going into detail about this, because these are all meditative statements. Like even when you're doing your own sadhana, when you sit for meditation, somewhere you should direct your thoughts, isn't it? The mind has to have a focal point. I'm so sorry. The mind has to have a focal point. Where will you focus the mind? On these statements. Soham, Tattvabodha Asi. Even Om is also an indicator of this only. All right. So understanding the essence of this statement is very, very important for our own personal sadhana also. Okay. So we will see that verse now, what Bhagavad Pada is saying. So next verse. Yes. Iti chena stula sukshma sharirabhimani tvam pada vachyartha upadi vinirmukta samadhi dasha sampannam shuddham chaitanyam tvam pada lakshyartha. So here he is saying about the tvam, that thou, that thou's lakshyartha and vakyartha he is explaining over here. Evam sarvajnatvadi visishta ishvara tat pada vachyartha upadi shunyam shuddha chaitanyam tat pada lakshyartha. So for Ishvara also he is talking about the vachyartha and lakshyartha, the actual and the indicative meaning. Evam cha Jiveshwaryo Chaitanya Rupena Abede Bhadaka Baba. So in the Chaitanya Rupena Abeda Bede, that Shuddha Chaitanya, in the pure consciousness state, there is no difference, there is no dualism between the Jiva and the Ishvara. That is what is being said here. We will see this verse in a little more detail now. Okay. Sorry. Okay, before we actually see it, let's take a minute to explore what God means to us. All right. So usually what we think when we say God, usually we have some image depending on our own upbringing, isn't it? If our parents were very strict extremely disciplining, or who are like fear-inducing, means they will say God is someone who is sitting there and waiting to punish you, isn't it? Umachi kanna kuttidu, pannada, God will punish you. No, God is watching. You should not. God will get angry. Some people feel like this. In some places, God, it doesn't even have a relevance. Okay, somebody somewhere is sitting in the sky doing whatever he is doing. I don't have anything to do with that God. That kind of people are also there. We also have people who say there is no God. Actually, even people who say, all these atheists also have place in Hinduism. In Sanatana Dharma, they also have a place. It is not against Sanatana Dharma to say there is no God, actually. So that's a topic for another day. But there are people who say there is no God. I don't believe in God. And there are people who feel that God is so full of love. He is, he is my beloved. Some people see God as a child and shower it with love. Some people see God as a friend with whom they can share all their feelings, all their thoughts. Some people see God as a beloved. Some people see God as a parent, as a protector. We all have different kind of bonding with God. Everybody has an extremely personal relationship with this God. Even no relationship is also an extremely personal relationship, isn't it? And there is no right or wrong in that. But if you observe very closely, the relationship with God is very much the kind of relationship that we have with ourselves. How do you talk to yourself? Do you talk to yourself with love, kindness? Or do you talk to yourself as a strict disciplinarian? Or do you talk to yourself as a friend? Very similar. The relationship that we have with ourselves is very similar to the relationship that we have with God. Okay, so this, you all can reflect on this. You can just observe how it is. For everyone, it will be different. You observe how it is for yourself. And it is a wonderful exercise to undertake also, right? So that it kind of deepens the bonding between us and the Supreme, isn't it? All right. Now, even in spite of all this, different faith has different versions of God, isn't it? In Hinduism, we give a name and form to all our gods, different names, different forms. Isn't it? So many different names and forms we have to the God. Some religions don't have any name or form to the God. They don't assign any name or form to the God. Name may be there, indicative, but there is no form. Idol worship is not there at all. Some religion, they have some aspects of idol worship or symbolism, like they worship fire, but they won't actually have an image. So there are so many different ways in which God is given an identity, isn't it? All right. But this God, when we give him a name and a form, remember, God is also what we saw in the Maya. Brahman plus Maya is equal to Ishvara. Remember that equation? All right. So by the underlying substratum of God is also Brahman only. Okay, remember that. So in Hinduism, in Sanatana Dharma, we have something called as Saguna Brahman and Nirguna Brahman. Okay. Nirguna Brahman is the Shuddha Chaitanya, pure consciousness. And Saguna Brahman is God with name and form. Sa Guna Nirguna. Guna, Sattva Rajas Tamas. Sa Guna Brahman is God, according to our tradition. Okay, Ishvara. Brahman plus Maya. Maya only has these three qualities. No. So Saguna Brahman is God. Nirguna Brahman is also there. That is Shuddha Chaitanya. All right. So how we see God depends on how we see ourselves. So this Ramana Maharishi explains it very beautifully. Okay. So it is even there in the book that Guruji has written. So somebody goes and asks Ramana Maharishi, Bhagavan, does God has form or not? Somebody asks this. And Bhagavan Ramana Maharishi says, how do you see yourself? Do you see yourself as with a name and form? Then God also has a name and form. Do you see yourself without a name and form? Then God also doesn't have name and form. It depends on our level of maturity. All right. So why I'm giving all this build-up is to ultimately transcend this name and form limitation that we have imposed on ourselves to realize Tattvabodha Asi. Okay. And it is a gradual step. And the first step to understand is to understand what kind of a relationship that we have with God. See, we may like different gods. We may feel, oh, if I'm going to start some work, I'm going to worship Ganesha. If I'm going to go on a travel, I'm going to worship Hanumanji. We may have different faith and different liking for different gods. But what is the relationship that you have with God? Are you going to God only to, oh God, please solve this problem for me? Or, oh God, please give me this, I don't have this. Are you always going to God as a beggar? Or are you having any meaningful relationship with God? So that is something that we have to explore. That is the first step. Then comes the second step of understanding how we see ourselves and thereby how we see God. Okay. So now, having given all these details, we will go to the verse. Okay. Remember that indicative and actual meaning. All right. So here what is saying is, the literal meaning of the word thou is the one identified with the gross and subtle bodies. That thou art. Tat Tvam Asi. Tvam, the literal meaning of Tvam is identified with the gross and subtle bodies, name and form. The implied meaning, Lakshyartha, is pure consciousness which is free from all conditionings, which is appreciated in deep state of meditation. Intellectually, we may talk about this for hours together, but for us to experience it, we have to do our sadhana, we have to do our meditation, we have to do the study, reflection, meditation, all this we have to do. Only then we will be able to appreciate it in its true sense. Okay, so here the indicative and the actual meaning of Tvam is explained. Okay, clear? Indicative meaning of Tvam is pure consciousness, which we can experience in deep state of meditation. The actual meaning of Tvam is the gross and subtle body, identification with the gross and subtle body. All right. So also, the literal meaning of that, the literal meaning of that is the Lord who is endowed with omniscience, Sarvagnya, Sadguna, Sarvaishwarya, all these things. The Lord with all names and forms and attributes is the literal meaning of Tat. The implied meaning of the word Tat or that is the pure consciousness free from all conditionings. So here you see the implied meaning in both. Implied meaning of Tvam is what? Consciousness which is free from all conditionings. The implied meaning of Tat is also pure consciousness free from all conditionings. Thus, there is no contradiction regarding the essential oneness between the individual and the Lord from the standpoint of consciousness. Okay, so if we were to see ourselves as this human being with this name and form, with our own limitations, then the God is also with all these names and forms. But God is without limitations, obviously, right? So then if we do an apple-to-apple comparison, it makes no sense. It is not even an apple-to-apple comparison, actually, right? So then it is not possible. But if we let go of all these superimpositions of the names and forms in an individual level and also in the totality level, all that is left behind is pure consciousness. And in that level, there is no difference whatsoever. There is no distinction whatsoever between the Jiva and the Ishvara. There is no Jiva Ishvara at all. Actually speaking, there is no Jiva, there is no Ishvara, there is only Brahman. But in our present state of evolution, we see us as the Jiva, and we know there is something called as Ishvara who is more powerful than that of the Jiva. But once we transcend our limitations through sadhana, through satsanga, through sadhana, we have to do sadhana. There is no other option for it. Okay, no matter how much theoretical knowledge we gain, we may be able to intellectually appreciate all this. We'll be like, yes, that makes sense. But unless until we experience it, all this is just like time pass, literally. Okay, so we have to put in that effort, and it is not easy, but we keep putting in that effort, and by the grace of our Guru and the God, we will be able to experience it for ourselves, and then life becomes bliss only, bliss only, because at the at the Lakshyatam, at the indicative meaning level, everything, we are all the same. We are all that pure Chaitanya, pure consciousness. Okay, so this is the meaning of Tattvabodha Asi. It is not this Aruna is equal to that Krishna. No. Aruna without name and form. No Aruna, no form, Shuddha Chaitanya. Krishna also, no name, no form, Shuddha Chaitanya. At that level, both are same. All right, so that is the meaning of Tattvabodha Asi. Clear? Any doubts? All other statements are also, I am Atma Brahma, the self is Brahman, Prajnanam Brahma, consciousness is Brahman. What is the other Mahavakya? What is the other Mahavakya? Suddenly not able to remember. Aham Brahmasmi, I am Brahman. All these are indicative of the same meaning only. Okay, so any doubts with regard to Tattvabodha Asi? Clear? We can keep reflecting on it. One of the easiest meditation practices that we can do is the Soham meditation. Okay, I'm sure you all would have done it. Soham. I am that. That is what Soham is. This is also a Mahavakya. Okay, so just we will do Soham meditation now and close the class. Ready, everybody? Just sit comfortably. You can do this along with me. Okay, close your eyes. Slow down your breathing for a minute. Take a moment to observe your body, to to observe your breath, observe your thoughts, and stay with this observer. The observer enlivens this body, enlivens this mind, enlivens this breath. And this essence of life in me is the very same essence of life in all beings. Same life principle is there in every being and also in everything. Same life principle is making the sun shine, is making the earth spin, is making the universe expand, it's causing the stars to implode and explode. And that life principle is the same in me. I am that. Soham. So we're going to inhale deeply, and as we exhale, we are going to chant Soham out aloud. Okay? Ready? Take a deep inhalation. Exhale completely. And let's begin. Inhale. Soham. 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 Slowly opening the eyes. This is one way we can reflect on this Mahavakya, okay? Every day we have to do this. Every day we have to keep, because it is very ingrained. This conditioning is so deeply ingrained in us. No, we have to put in that much effort to let go of this conditionings also, okay? So sadhana, it need not be long, but it needs to be intense. But it must be done. We should do sadhana for us to make sense of all these texts. Otherwise, just a time pass only, all this. It's like reading a mystery novel. We are reading all this. That should not be the case, isn't it? So, yeah. Yeah, Soham, you can say out aloud, or you can say within the mind also. Saying out aloud is a little easier to concentrate. Initially, at least. Or if you're already feeling you have good concentration, you can chant it within your mind also. But the feeling should be that life principle in me is what is there everywhere. Okay, so that should be the mood with which you practice the Soham meditation. All right. So shall we finish the class with our closing prayers? I will share the screen. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnam Udachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vasishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Hari Om. So next we are going to, in the next class, we are going to see about what is the characteristics of a man of a realization. And then we will also see about karma, action and freedom from bondage in action. All these are going to come next. We are almost towards the end of the text. And probably in another 4 class, we will be finishing it. And then we will have a Q&A. Okay. Thank you so much for joining. I'll see you all again soon. Take care. Hari Om. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Hari Om.
Hari Om.